Michelle Lewis, take one.
What does the word gentrification mean to you?
Pain, loss, grief.
The people that are coming here now are completely oblivious to what was. They don't care to know about what was.
I've not yet found any indication that there's something positive associated for Black people with gentrification.
And they're just tearing apart like stuff that represented our childhood, stuff that represented home for us.
I think when we look at the Black community in relationship to gentrification, it's one of those things where there's that saying, if they come for me at night, they'll be coming for you in the morning.
We have families come in every day with a 30-day notice. The house has been sold. The landlord doubled the rent.
Rent and unemployment are too high in the city of Portland.
Apparently, cleaning up the neighborhood meant getting rid of all the brown folks.
Everything sells. There's a value for literally everything in Portland.
We can't raise wages fast enough when our rent is allowed to go up by unlimited amounts.
I was paying $825. They're asking me to pay $1,200 a month.
Displacement that's happening to people of all races is unprecedented.
In 2015, amid soaring home prices and an unprecedented wave of rent spikes and evictions, Portland was ranked as the most gentrified city in America. And residents young and old, Black, white, and brown, were crying out for relief from the housing crisis. Hi. I'm Cornelius Swart, and I'm a gentrifier. In 2002, I made a documentary entitled Northeast Passage, The Inner City and the American Dream. It was about home ownership, gentrification, and this woman, Nikki Williams. Nikki was a single mom who lived her whole life in Northeast Portland, which at the time she called a ghetto. The film ended this way.
So as far as the gentrification, I still say let it come. Call it what you want. Let it come, please. Let it come.
By 2013, Nikki felt very differently about gentrification. And 3 years later, she asked me to do a sequel. So here I am, covering gentrification once again as the issue goes mainstream. And it's not just Portland. For the first time in 170 years, the nation's middle class and wealthy are choosing to live at the center of the city instead of as far away from it as possible. And as investors rush to cash in, urban communities are being torn apart. Why did Nikki first support gentrification? And what's the difference between revitalization, gentrification, and a housing crisis? And how will these forces shape the future of American cities? To answer those questions, we're going to shuffle back and forth through history and talk to people of all stripes to find out what really happens when people get priced out. We start our story just before I arrived in the late 1990s, in a cluster of northeast Portland neighborhoods often called the Albina community. To many outsiders, Albina may have looked depressed, abandoned, even dangerous. But to many living there, it was a community unlike any other in Oregon.
Everybody in my neighborhood was Black. The neighbor on this side, the neighbor on that side, across the streets, like everybody looked like me.
You just didn't see white people in Northeast Portland.
People would turn their music up and everyone would come out on their porches and almost like have a party. And we knew each other. When you walk outside your front door, you speak. This whole thing of people not knowing their neighbors and not speaking, I'm just like, what is this?
The neighborhood would eventually become my home, too. My friend Spencer Wolf and I were both from the suburbs outside New York City. We could see that gentrification was creeping into Albina, and in 1997, we started work on Northeast Passage. A few months later, Spencer and I met Nikki. She lived only 4 blocks away.
We're sitting in the kitchen of my brand new home. It was built by Habitat for Humanity. I'm the youngest of 21. So I've got my street degree, and I've had that for many years. I have 1 child. And I wanted her to kind of really have the chance to totally have me. This is my daughter, Albina.
Oh, no.
Social worker by day.
I'm not.
Interior designer by night.
This is my room. My mom did all that. She did all the handprints. I made this and I made that and the pictures, and my mom just got me those.
While we set out to make a film about gentrification, Nikki and many of the people we talked to had more immediate concerns.
There's 3 houses I can think of on this block that are known drug houses. I see it every day. Lots of gangs on this street. I am involved in Neighborhood Watch. I am involved in Neighborhood Association. I am trying to make a difference, but unfortunately I have been targeted because I call the police, something's wrong with me. You know, and I think that is really what kind of scares me and angers me, how this has been so normalized.
Are you gonna clean up this neighborhood single-handed?
If I have to.
By calling the police, Nikki had broken the code of silence, and that had gotten her into a lot of trouble with other people on her block. When I met her, she'd been harassed and threatened to the point that she was scared to go out at night.
I fear for my daughter's sanity. You know, it's really taking a toll on her.
My biggest fear is someone breaking in here, which I doubt is gonna happen, but if it does, probably fail or something.
Because although nothing really bad has happened yet, there's always the possibility that it could. So yeah, I'm starting to kind of worry a little.
Before we go any further, we should take a few steps back to the very origins of the neighborhood. Oregon was the only state to enter the Union with a constitutional ban on blacks living and owning property in its territory. The Black Exclusion Edict wasn't repealed by voters until 1926. And throughout the early 20th century, Portland had less than 2,000 black residents. But then, within the span of just 4 years, the black population in the region would explode. At the outset of World War II, industrialist Henry J. Kaiser located a massive shipbuilding operation in Portland. He recruited workers, both black and white, from the South. During the war years, Portland's African-American population grew tenfold to as many as 25,000.
I moved from Birmingham in 1944 when I was 7 years of age. We lived out in a place called Vanport.
Kaiser and the government rushed to build temporary worker housing. The largest such complex was Vanport City, and by 1943, Vanport had become the country's largest public housing development.
There was like 4 major neighborhoods, and there was community centers for each neighborhood. There were shopping centers, there was bus service, there was daycare, just everything.
But after the war, almost half of the residents at Vanport remained. City leaders publicly shunned the area, saying that it was turning into a slum.
After the war, the attitude of the political establishment, specifically Mayor Riley and the council, was that they wanted Vanport gone as soon as possible. They started removing apartments. They wanted to destroy Vanport.
The Columbia River was just loaded with water. There was heavy winter snows and then early spring rains. Dikes broke around about 4 o'clock on Memorial Day, 1948.
Water came cascading in about 15 feet high. They literally ran for their lives up to Denver Avenue, and in some cases formed human chains to pull people out. And in a matter of 45 minutes, the city was flooded.
They lost about 13 people, and there was no Vanport.
The library was gone, the grade schools were gone, the police station was gone. The entire structure of the city disappeared in that one afternoon.
But the tragic destruction of Vanport gave birth to a dynamic new community as thousands of Vanport evacuees began to flow into Albina. Just north and northeast of downtown, the area was originally a Scandinavian, Irish, and German neighborhood. Portland was segregated, and by the turn of the century, city leaders had already slated the south end of Albina as the area where the black population would be confined. And by 1950, there were almost 10,000 African Americans in Portland, the vast majority of whom lived in Albina.
There's all kinds of fantastic things on MLK. In the 50s, it was called Union Avenue. I mean, there were car dealerships, dairies. It was a thriving street.
We had men's stores along Russell there. Georgia Shoe Repair was there.
On the corner was Lou's Men's Shop. Lou sold the clothes that we like. You know, you see us every now and then, some yellow pants or purple pants or the shoes that turn up on the end.
Paul's Paradise Club. Gapery Tavern, I think, was right there. Even the Cotton Club was right over here.
There weren't many empty storefronts. It was a vibrant place. It was busy. It was a hopping place.
It's a wonderful place to be because you saw yourself.
It was all America, USA, but for black folks.
It was a heyday that would pass all too quickly. By the time I got to Albina, it was still the center of Oregon's black population. Like most inner-city communities, Albina had declined since the middle of the century. But crime was beginning to subside. And years of disinvestment and abandonment were turning around as new residents and businesses began to move in.
I really didn't feel a real change until about 1995, where people were now talking, I know it's bad right now, but I know it ain't gonna be bad 10 years from now. So I'm trying to hurry up and get in while the getting is good. People who were buying over here, a lot of them were younger and not from here, and white. A white person from Detroit, New York, Chicago, they'd come over here and look at our prices for some of these gorgeous homes that we had over here and say, this is a bad area. I mean, we didn't have anywhere near enough shootings to intimidate them. 4 bedrooms, 3 fireplaces, 3 bathrooms. Sold for like $45,000.
From what year?
1990. I sold this house in 97 to some friends of mine. 90 grand.
They sold for $2,500. That was back in 1986, I think. And this house right here sold for $10,000.
Sold this house for like 60 grand in 1991.
How much do you think that house is worth if it sold today?
Over $1 million.
Nikki eventually found allies among her new neighbors and the Boise Neighborhood Association, who helped her organize crime-fighting efforts on her block.
The meeting we're at tonight is called Hope and Hard Work. The police come faithfully, homeowners, renters, the mayor sometimes comes, and different organizations involved in trying to clean up the streets.
But by the late 1990s, some felt that revitalization was turning into gentrification.
Gentrification? Yeah. I feel like that might be happening here. It is happening here. You don't see it? A lot of minority families and poor families that can't afford to live in this area are going to buy. Going back to Vanport. You bought the house 7 years ago when you moved in?
Right. The asking price was $79.
And what was the neighborhood like back then?
It's called the Wild Wild West. You know, gunfire every night. See 2 guys on either side of a car shooting at each other, and they can't hit each other. You know, they're never going to get you.
Why did you move into the neighborhood if it was so dangerous?
Inexpensive.
How much are you going to sell this one for?
I'm hoping 195.
Do you ever mourn the old neighborhood's loss?
Oh, not at all. mourning the loss of the way something was is pointless. It's going to change whether you want it to or not. Everything does.
The crack house next door, she's out of here. The broad across the street, she's gone. We have worked very hard with the police and the community to clean this street. This street never had foot patrol until we started it here. Ever. Never. That's something we got in place.
There still is a lot of drugs, but my mom, she's doing good at taking care of that. But she's doing a real good job. I'm proud of my mom.
I've been here for a little over a year. The rent is $600, but I'm on Section 8, and they cover most of the costs. I would like to stay in this area because this is where I grew up, but it's getting more expensive, and I don't know. I know if I do stay in this neighborhood, it's going to be hard finding a place. It's going to be really hard.
Despite the downsides, Nikki believed the rising tide of newcomers would help to lift all the boats in the neighborhood.
But I've seen the rotten, ugly bottom part of the apple. I'd like to see the top part, the shiny, red, edible part, I guess you could say. I'd like to see that happen. And I've been told changes are coming. Let them come. Let them come.
We released Northeast Passage in 2002. It sparked a lot of local debate, and Nikki became somewhat of a minor celebrity. After the film, I wound up moving to St. John's, a community just to the west of Albina, where I continued to cover gentrification as the publisher of a community newspaper. But when the recession hit, businesses started closing left and right. I lost 50% of my advertisers in 12 months, and I closed the paper in March of 2010. At that time, subprime foreclosures were rampant and rents were climbing. I'd been evicted without cause from 2 places in North Portland, but I still owned my house off Williams Avenue, and eventually I moved back in. I was lucky. In 2006, Oregon African Americans and Latinos were twice as likely as whites to receive subprime mortgages.
When the crash hit, this is one of the first areas people with money hit.
We were paying about maybe $900 overnight. My mortgage shot up close to maybe $1,800.
Was it a subprime mortgage?
Yes, it was.
You know, the best time to invest is in the down cycle. Well, people who are wealthy, they know that.
I just accepted reality that we're gonna have to move, and then one day a realtor showed up and was like, we're gonna give you guys $1,000 to be out of this home by XYZ date. We got everything cleaned up. She came over, gave us $1,000 check, and that was it. My home was gone.
During the period of time where the people don't have cash, if you've got cash, you can make a lot of opportunities for yourself.
What can we do? We couldn't, I was embarrassed about it because I didn't know what to tell my kids.
If I'm thinking about just my street, Black people are moving out, white people in general are moving in. That being said, my world is bigger than just my street. I do a Black professionals group that gets together at the pub. There's, 70 to 80 Black men, judges, lawyers, business owners. You find ways to make community. Since the late 90s, families of color actually have a choice in where they want to live. And I think prior to the 90s, I don't really think people had a choice.
By 2013, after I moved back to Albina, I really noticed how much the neighborhood had changed. White people were everywhere, and construction projects were breaking ground all around my house. New shops, bike lanes, and a high-end grocery store were all on their way. I was working at the state's largest newspaper, The Oregonian, and decided to do a story on what Nikki thought about all the changes.
I live in the historic, and I have to say it that way, the historic Mississippi Avenue area.
Same place.
Same place, but not the same place. I am a full-time plus student. When I first moved here, the only white folks on the block were the gay couple next door. It went from one white occupied household to all white except 3. Damn. I don't go down Mississippi Avenue just because it's so damn white. And it's not just that it's white, it's like this, I'm afraid to talk to you, look at you, speak at you kind of white. So when I do go down Mississippi Avenue, I've jokingly said I feel like Moses with a staff in front of me because, you know, the waters seem to part, you know? Oh yeah, my skin is my sin, as usual, as usual. Yeah, there's a lot of stores and boutiques and places to shop. You have lots of eateries up and down Mississippi Avenue. We even have an ice cream shop, but who the hell can afford $4 for an ice cream cone for their kid? Yeah, I said it. And it's interesting to me because it's like a lot of these folks wouldn't have stepped foot over here back in the day. You know, wouldn't have stepped foot over here. Like, where were all y'all when it was time to do the foot patrol? Where were all y'all when it was time to get out here and you know, go toe-to-toe and face-to-face with drug dealers and gangbangers and all of that? That's what's so weird. I live in this community, fought like hell to make it quote-unquote livable, whatever the hell that was redefined to me, and now I don't even deal with it. Are you serious? I am very grateful that they don't have on this sign a bunch of brown-skinned people smiling, looking like they're having the time of their life, because that's one thing at least they didn't pretend and do that bullshit. They don't even pretend to include people like me. I guess what I wanted to see happen is people give a damn about the community that was there, not push everybody the hell out, then come in, build it up, and say now they can't come back. I wanted people to give a fuck about those of us who were there already.
Nikki could see a day when she might leave the neighborhood, not because she would lose her house, but because she would lose the community she'd always called home. For years, minorities and low-income residents had been moving out to the fringes of the city, particularly East Portland. Wages and federal housing subsidies, called Section 8 vouchers, hadn't kept up with rising rents.
We have families come in every day with a 30-day notice. The house has been sold. The landlord doubled the rent or something like that.
That's one of the questions, one of the main things. Where are the black people at? Where are my folks at?
The southeast area where everyone has been pushed into, I don't want to live out there at all.
Oh, we're out here in the numbers, 181st, 162nd.
We're in Gresham, we're in Fairview, we're in Troutdale.
There's even less out there that's like oriented for people of color.
Felony Flats, the New Hood, Wild Hundreds are terms that I've heard.
The only place that I could find that I could afford on my Section 8 voucher was out on 162nd.
The place that we lived in was very, very nice, but the neighbors weren't really welcome.
They'll be the first to tell you, I don't feel welcome in this neighborhood, but I'm just gonna bear with it.
It's not uncommon that you hear about the Klan, pieces of, I wanna say flyers of them recruiting and looking for members, and how the neighborhood is being run over with immigrants and niggas.
Displacement wasn't new for Albina. And while the destruction of Vanport might have been an act of God, other periods of displacement were acts of men. Following the war, it was almost impossible for African Americans to live outside of Albina. The Portland Realty Board required that agents only sell blacks' homes inside the district, while builders created rules forbidding black ownership in their developments.
My dad and mom found a house. We got approved through the bank and all the whole thing, but the neighborhood association had this white-only rule. My mom especially was just crying and crying and crying about the fact that she really wanted that house, but they wouldn't sell it to us.
But even buying a home in Albina wasn't easy. In the 1930s, the federal government and the banking industry had divided all communities in America into 4 color-coded sections, outlining the areas they would not lend to in red. The term redlining became a catchphrase for any time banks were unwilling to lend to people and in places viewed as undesirable. And as the white population moved out and banks cut off the flow of money, properties withered and turned into what city officials would later call blight.
Cities across the country were losing population to the suburbs, and Portland was among them. You go back to the early 60s, Beaverton had 7,000 people. And you get to, the 1970s, 1980s, it was several times that.
In 1958, voters created the Portland Development Commission, an entity designed to identify and remove urban blight through revitalization projects known as urban renewal. No neighborhood was hit harder by urban renewal than Albina. In 1956, voters approved the construction of Memorial Coliseum, a project that leveled 476 homes. In 1964, another 400 residents were displaced by the construction of Interstate 5. As Portland moved deeper into the civil rights era, riots erupted in Albina in 1967 and again in 1969, following the death of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
After Dr. King was killed, along with the riot, whites stopped coming because the blacks were there, the blacks stopped coming because the whites were there. And here I'm sitting here with this business with no business, just a few customers each night.
As businesses died off, the PDC targeted Williams Avenue for yet another urban renewal project. Under the plan, the core of the neighborhood would be demolished and replaced with facilities for Emmanuel Hospital. And beginning in 1971, the city and Emmanuel condemned and demolished nearly 300 properties on 22 blocks through the powers of eminent domain.
The city would come in and place a condemned sticker on it. Within 6 months, they would have it demoed out. And it ain't where, can we negotiate this? It's you take it or leave it, because if you don't take it, we're just gonna take it.
Despite all this, in 1973, federal money for the hospital's expansion fell through, and Emmanuel's plans were put on indefinite hold.
The pharmacy was gone, dry cleaners, everything in that block. The whole block is still empty, and that was in 1970, and they tore it down.
In less than 20 years, this handful of projects had demolished over 1,100 homes in the core of Black Albina. Portland as a whole began to decline in the 1970s. And by the 80s, Albina in particular had fallen into the depths of the drug war.
Got Crips and Bloods rolling up I-5, all the way from Compton, and they see some easy pickings up here.
We dealt with the heroin and all of those things for a number of years, and then along comes crack.
9th Avenue from Alberta to Killingsworth was called Crack Alley.
Right there in this street right here in this intersection, which is Jared and Mallory, I can think of at least 6 shootings since I bought this house in 1989. At least 6.
People were sleeping in their bathtubs and in the basement because of the bullets and stuff flying around. We tried to address it, but it was one of those things that was pretty overwhelming at the time.
People just wanted to get out and just give me $5,000, the house is yours.
The property values were so diminished. Landlords
simply walked away from them rather than pay the back taxes and be saddled with a property that wasn't worth it.
The city began new revitalization efforts designed to avoid the mass demolitions of past decades. Portland focused public dollars on small-scale redevelopments, new transit systems, and services that benefited single-family homeowners and small businesses. And Portland began to attract residents back from the suburbs. That's when I showed up. After interviewing gentrifiers for a year, I thought maybe I should buy a house as well. My daughter was 2, and we had already lived in 3 different places. So I bought a house just off Williams Avenue with down payment help from my parents. The truth is, I didn't really want to live in Albina, but it was what I could afford. I was 26, fixing up a house full of roommates, kids, and dogs, and to be honest, it was a bit of a dream come true for me. The city continued revitalization efforts, knowing gentrification was coming. In 2000, the PDC drew up an urban renewal district for a new light rail system that would run along the western edge of Albina.
That was the greatest concern, regularly voiced by the community members, is displacement. The city forecasted displacement. And so they said, okay, we forecast that this much displacement is going to occur. To counter that, we're going to create units of affordable housing. Priority would go to existing residents.
I think more good has been achieved than damage. If we're successful in bringing an area back to life, revitalizing it, bringing more investment, it also does create a downside in that an area becomes more desirable. People who can't afford their current rents now face an even deeper hole in trying to meet their basic needs.
If the city had built the number of affordable units they promised,
that would have prevented the mass displacement. It would have been enough.
In our film Northeast Passage, we'd seen what happened when the Boise neighborhood adopted a policy to oppose all subsidized rentals in its area.
We don't support anymore rental housing that is subsidized for people whose incomes are lower than 60% of median family income.
Our perception was that there was sufficient low-income housing to handle our needs.
I want to go on record in saying that the land use policy sounds quite racist, and I think it should be revisited. I second that.
It boils down to a racial issue. The very same houses that whites can come into the community and get, African Americans are redlining, can't get the loans from the banks.
One question you brought up earlier about being against affordable housing. Most neighborhood associations were flat out against it. Big mistake. Big mistake.
The policy was based on known facts at the time. You can only make decisions based on your reality at a time.
There's a lot of things I would do different if I had a crystal ball back then and could see today. The problem is you don't have a crystal ball.
In 2015, I was doing pretty well for myself. I had left the Oregonian and was in charge of a small online news startup. My daughter was grown and off to school. And I was single again and started going to brew pubs, food carts, and on naked bike rides. I even found myself hanging out on Williams Avenue and shopping at New Seasons. That's when Nikki got in touch with me. She said the changes in the neighborhood had become unbearable. She was leaving Oregon forever, and she wanted me to do a sequel.
I need to be someplace where there's enough brown folk that I can feel supported and empowered, and I don't have that here. When I used to look out my door, I could at least see people who looked like me. Even if they were cussing me out and calling me whatever, they still looked like me. And I could connect on that level. I don't even have that anymore. I don't even have that.
Are you looking forward to selling the house?
I'm looking forward to getting the hell out of Portland, Oregon. So I guess, yeah, I'm looking forward to selling the house.
And why are you looking forward to getting out of Portland?
It is so foreign now. It's just, and I feel like an alien visiting a strange place. The Black community has been obliterated. You know, I mean, growing up, being born and raised in Portland, Oregon, there was a certain kind of, yes, it's always been a racist state, but it was a different kind of white that was here. It was an in-your-face, hey, how you doing? Look you in the eye type of thing. Now it's this passive-aggressive, cowardly, I can't even explain it.
Nikki was moving in a few months, and that meant I had a lot to do. I set up an office, launched a Kickstarter campaign, and started interviewing people in my living room. But Nikki wasn't the only one I wanted to catch up with.
My name is Albina Williams. I go by Bree now. And I just turned 27 on the 14th of April. I have a lot of fun memories. I do playing in the neighborhood, the carefree of being a child, the comfort of the community, the closeness that we had. Even though there was chaos there, that was home.
Move! Yep. Ma, she all up in the view. They don't want to see her.
I graduated from Grant High School, 2006. I moved to California. I had my son out there, and so my mom became a grandma. I was almost 20 years old. I can't imagine, I'm gonna cry. I can't imagine life without my son. I draw strength from him so much. He's bright, he's caring, he's really sincere. He has a very close bond with my mother, and he can talk more with her about things, but it was like that with my grandma. I just love his little life. His name's Samir Jasmar Williams. He's a first grader at Boise Elementary.
Bree lived in a subsidized apartment close to her mother and her Black majority neighborhood school.
I want my son to be proud of who he is and knowing that he's going to school with other Black kids and he's not a unique case.
But many Black parents made the long journey each day from East Portland to the inner city in order to keep their kids at Black majority schools.
Our day probably started around 5:30. Getting up, getting everyone together, making breakfast, and then getting out the door, getting everybody dropped off to school.
I put my son in a school out in East Portland, and he was assaulted by a teacher. And from then on, I just said my children won't go to these schools that were predominantly white. And so I made sure that my kids got into King School. And there was a sense of community in that school for our children and history. And my son thrived there.
Watch out for the candle. Don't poke yourself in the eye, sweetie. Am I profiting from what's going on? You bet. But I look at this the way I look at racism. I didn't create it. It is not my burden to cure it all by my damn self.
These mirrors is going too, Nikki. When you have to pick and choose where you're going to live or you're going to feed your family, that's a stress on a person. Shit just ain't been the same. It just ain't been the same.
It ain't gonna be the same if we don't stick together.
And see, this is the part when I hear the new folks moving in and oh, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, y'all here because you get beer every 10 feet. And you know, you can go to New Seasons and buy a $15 organic apple, but it's like, this is real heartbreak.
The anger that I have for the changes that's come to this community, and I feel it every day, is not good. That's not good. That's not something I want to feel. I want to, you're supposed to accept change and embrace it, even if it is not necessarily wanted. I just never thought my community would look like this, and it's not even my community anymore. I can't say that. Like, I don't know what this is. This is where I live, but it's not home. And my son feels it. When I take him to parks, like I took him to Laurelhurst and the little boys won't play with him. And it's gross to me. You know, he's like, they won't play with me. He'll ask them nicely. And I'll tell him, don't beg anyone to play with you. I could not say that I expected this. I did not think it would become so bad that my mom would be leaving. So I really don't care if it was considered a ghetto. I'd take that over this any day.
Since the recession, Portland had become a fad. Its revitalized neighborhoods and quirky Northwest lifestyle had caught on with the nation.
Everything sells. There's a value for literally everything in inner North and Northeast Portland. If it doesn't sell to a homeowner, then it sells to a developer who's going to tear it down and redevelop it.
I surveyed living room agents last year, and 40% of all the first-time homebuyers receive gift funds. Homebuyers that do not have access to gift funds from parents, from inheritance, are at a huge disadvantage.
Gentrification in Albina had merged with a citywide real estate bubble that was bringing in speculators from all over the country. And as home prices climbed and vacancy rates stagnated, rents went through the roof.
What we started hearing was significantly different than we heard in previous years. Entire buildings, 150% increases in 30 days. Seniors who are not taking half of their medications, people having to cut their food budgets in half and not eating as often.
In the state of Oregon, 40% of people are now renters, 49% of people in Portland. And we also know that approximately half of those people are rent burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on their rent.
So we're seeing out-of-state developers or homegrown developers, investors, buying up buildings and then flipping them and clearing out the building. This widespread displacement that's happening to people of all races, of all backgrounds, is unprecedented.
But many Portlanders decided they would not take the housing crisis lying down.
If you are working class, poor, lower middle class, there are very few neighborhoods that you can afford to live in this city. And if you do an overlay around people of color, you can forget it.
Give yourselves a cheer for being here, and we'll head on up.
You're losing the heart of the city when you start displacing people like me.
Ranked as 4th in the nation for the rate at which rents are rising, people are losing their housing faster than we can keep up.
all sides agreed that home prices were rising faster than wages, a growing national issue.
Rent and unemployment are too high in the city of Portland.
When you compare particularly Portland with other similar size and demographic type cities, our incomes versus housing prices are way out of whack.
Restore local control!
We demand that Governor Kate Brown declare a housing state of emergency.
Yes!
Say it with me. A housing state of emergency.
Oregon right now is a very landlord-friendly state.
High rent has got to go! The people want rent control!
There's a statewide ban on rent control.
I was paying $825. They're asking me to pay $1,200 a month. And there is no protection right now.
A clause in landlord-tenant law that allows landlords to kick people out for no reason. You don't have to register a rental property, so we don't even know how many rental properties exist in the city of Portland.
On 11940 Southeast Back Street. We are standing in solidarity with these tenants. You have casually treated these tenants like ATMs, like piggy banks to be cracked, with callous disregard to the impact it will have on their families.
They want to make a statement to anybody?
Doesn't surprise me at all. We know that. We know that this is an uphill battle.
Have you ever been to Texas?
I've never been to Texas, but I've been to Florida a few times. So we'll see.
So why Texas? Why did you choose Texas?
Why not Texas? Why not? And I did my research. Right now, Dallas is the #1 place to find a husband if you're a single black woman, so holla! There's always a method to my madness, honey, always.
Your bedtime, sweetie.
So it's time for you to go to bed, so
Come
say
on,
goodbye to
sweetie.
Grandma.
Grandma's gonna miss you, okay? You listen to your teacher and you listen to Mommy, okay? All right.
All right, Mom.
Love you.
Love you too. Call me or I'll call you. I probably won't still be in Oregon. I definitely don't want my son, especially the route that Portland is going, I definitely don't want him to grow up here. This is not home anymore.
My carry-on. That's nothing. You have a seat?
Gate number 9.
All right. I'm at a point in my life where I need to be around more brown folk. I don't kid myself into believing because they look like me, I'm gonna fall in love and we're gonna have tea and Kool-Aid every Tuesday. But I have begun to feel so isolated and so alienated here in Portland that I cannot call this living, this is existing. There has to be more to my life than this.
Grandma time anymore, don't you start crying. Don't you dare. Come on. Don't you dare, because you know it's for the better.
While Nikki was getting ready to leave, she granted me one more interview and came to my house off Williams Avenue at 4 a.m. She talked about a lot of things. About the last matriarch of the block, who'd recently died. About the racist cops she'd worked with while studying the criminal justice system. And about her sister, who was strangled to death in front of her own children back in the 1980s. What's remarkable is that for Nikki, no matter how bad the neighborhood had been at times, there was always a safe place for her there, between the dangers of the street and the hostility of a white majority culture. And now, that place was gone, but not just for her.
As happy as I was when my grandson was born, On top of that wonderful joy was a fear gripping my heart. Oh my God. She had a black boy, a dark-skinned little boy. The fact that I was afraid for him at a time when all I should have felt was joy and love is a reality check that I have to deal with. So I want my grandson to go and be in a community and be around people who look like him, who embrace him, who look him in the eye and acknowledge that he exists. One of the things my grandson would always say, he would always say, "Grandma, why are the people here so mean?" They're just so mean to me, Grandma. And I don't think I should be sitting here in tears. In the year 2015, when all I want for him is something that we claim to be doing already. It's ridiculous. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Nikki had decided to flee gentrification, but others had decided to fight. In November of 2013, the PDC agreed to sell a publicly owned lot in the heart of Albina to a California developer at a $2.4 million discount. The site would become a major retail center, anchored by a Trader Joe's grocery store. Activists railed against the project, claiming it was nothing more than subsidized gentrification.
The community was saying that they're sick and tired of having the PDC and the city continue to treat us as if we're stupid.
They demand it. City, your policies has led to the mass displacement of African Americans out of this community. It's time that you do something about it.
It actually ended up going national. So it was big and quite controversial.
Trader Joe's withdrew from the project, and the city invested an additional $20 million into affordable housing projects in Albina, while gentrification grew into the city's top priority.
Lack of affordable housing is the greatest crisis now facing our cities.
The fact that a number of folks had courage enough to stand up and to push back, I mean, it made all of the difference in the world. The question is, can we continue the momentum? People shouldn't accept the little bit as if, since the ball is moving, that's somehow good enough. No, we need to keep the pressure on. And I think that was a place where the pressure got started, and it's been continuing on thus far. But again, I hope folks can keep up the energy.
In the fall of 2015, Portland rolled out a right to return policy that gave former Albina residents preference when applying for subsidized housing in Northeast Portland. Rachel Hall moved back to the Boise neighborhood and into a rental house owned by the nonprofit PCRI.
They ended up calling me and telling me that they actually had a place for me. I about fell off my chair. We were in a home again. So my youngest can walk to school, which makes it really nice. They can go to friend's house that is just, around the corner. And my kids have never had that opportunity to do that.
Michelle Lewis left East Portland and moved into a market-rate rental house just outside her old neighborhood.
Hi, come in. Welcome to Texas. Feels heavenly actually staying in an apartment again. It's a 1-bedroom. It's big enough for me.
Now that I have left Portland and got away from Portland, I tell people I feel like I'm breathing oxygen for the first time in my life. And that says something. That says something. I feel like a totally different person out here. I feel like me. I see Mesquite the way the Californians must have felt when they first came to Oregon in Portland. Because when I look at a lot of these acres, because there's tons of just acreage, you know, I can see a developer looking at that or someone with the means and saying, oh my goodness, there's nothing but potential out here. It really has made me see maybe the other side of the gentrification. Yes, I think it has horrible and devastating consequences, absolutely. I've lived it, okay? But I can see where someone can look at something and see opportunity. Absolutely. I can see that now. I can't co-sign it, but I can see it.
I mean, I think that the opportunities are large.
But everyone says like Texas is a great place to be. There's a lot of opportunity, especially for people of color. There's more for him, the people that look like him out there. I might trek out there because I know some here will go crazy, and I'll miss her.
I think a lot of the discussion is around this idea that if, you know, you can just get people of color back into Northeast Portland, then everything will be fine. Where they live is not the issue. How are they doing is the issue.
For those of us who choose to return, what does that look like for us? How do we prevent this from happening again?
Just because you have gentrification doesn't mean you don't have to have some quality, affordable housing. That's kind of what we learned here. It's not too late to make the next gentrification cycle better. And if we don't, it'll be a shame.
At the heart of it is, how do we control costs that go up in an environment where people see Portland as an investment opportunity?
I think that the possibilities that we have in front of us, it could be great. And I would rather look at it that way than wave the white flag and say, it's over, we're done, they won, and go home.
The American dream was once to live in the suburbs. But tastes have changed. Gentrification is full of contradictions. Nikki showed how you could have a house and still lose a home. And while so many can get displaced, others can get a chance to chase a dream. And we'll have to work together if we're going to build a world where everyone has some real choice over where they can live. And it makes me think of something Nikki said to Bree way back in 1999. And living in the hood is an option and not a life sentence. You'll thank me.
This feels like home. I've talked to people who talked about when they went someplace, the minute they got there, they knew this is it, I'm home. The minute I got here, it was like, oh my goodness. The life that I've always seen, but didn't know how to get to, that place. I think I'm definitely headed there. So I guess I am my American dream. And I'm happy to realize it.